A number of housing affordability bills are making their way through the state legislature, but critics maintain that the measures will do anything but make housing more affordable. Among those critics, Mary Crozier, president of the North Central Phoenix Homeowners Association. Welcome to Arizona Horizon. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You bet. It sounds like you're not happy with some of these housing affordability bills in the legislature. Why?
Well, the two specific ones called the Arizona Starter Home Bills have really nothing to do with creating affordability. As a matter of fact, if these do get passed, we feel it will make affordability even worse, more difficult. So let's reflect on why are we where we are today? Well, during the pandemic, private equity groups and investors went on a shopping spree all across the United States and purchased as many single-family homes as possible. Statistics say 1 out of every 4 homes for sale were purchased by investors. What that did here in the hot market of Arizona was drive our housing prices up 54% for single-family homes and increase rent to over 47% increase. So Arizona was one of the most affected by those investor programs. In Maricopa County, for example, we have one investor that owns over 10,000 homes. So both of these Arizona Starter Home bills don't have any provisions at all for housing affordability or starter homes.
They don't, but they do limit zoning regulations with the idea of driving down the cost of home building to get more homes constructed. You buying that?
No, not at all. Because really, no matter what you build, it's going to cost somebody some money, and if an investor comes in and buys all of them, that just drives the prices of the houses up. So, in other areas, I've done some research on this, and when they say, well, if you build more homes, the price will go down. The Urban, Institute just released a study saying that is clearly not the case. And it also depends on the market. But we have 200 to 300 people moving here every day. So to create a housing glut will take a very, very long time.
What about the idea of allowing additional homes on larger properties?
Well, right now, someone can certainly apply for that. There are processes in place where you can apply to rezone a parcel and work through local zoning. But the minute you take local zoning oversight away, that creates significant problems and is actually dangerous.
Yeah, I was going to say the oversight issue seems to be at play here because there's also limiting regulations on fences and these sorts of things, and design and architectural aesthetic regulations, those sorts of things. The bill, the Starter Homes Act, says get rid of all that, allow these homes to be built, to be put on private property, get more houses, get the prices down, and you're saying not necessarily.
Nothing in the bill states that at all. And it's the classic, the fox watching the hen house. Of course, developers and out-of-state investors would love to remove any local zoning control in our cities and towns. That's an investor's dream, but it's a home buyer's nightmare.
Homeowner's nightmare, too?
A homeowner's nightmare, too, certainly.
Yeah. There's a bill, for lack of a better phrase, it's called Yes in God's Backyard bill, and it talks about constructing homes on church and religious organization properties. What do you think about that one?
Well, again, the churches have the ability, most churches, at least in our neighborhood, are zoned residential for single-family homes, so they can currently do that. The Yes in God's Backyard, to me, is not written well enough to include any bill that takes away local government oversight, local zoning oversight, and silences neighborhoods isn't a bill we would support.
So even though the bill would focus on low and moderate income housing, the idea that there's no rezoning, there's no public hearing, that pretty much shoots it down for you.
Well, the percentage in the bill for low-income housing is relatively low. So it's not a bill that really addresses low-income housing, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, it's bipartisan support at the legislature, though, from what I understand.
Somewhat.
Yeah, somewhat.
With lots of recommendations for amendments.
But again, and again, we have a couple other bills here that we don't have too much time to talk more about, but it seems like streamlining the regulation process is a big one here. Is there a way to cut it in half, to streamline without losing local control?
Well, in our neighborhood, Ted, we are pro-development, reasonable and responsible development. We work very well with developers and go through the channels that exist with our local zoning in the city of Phoenix. And the process has been smooth for us. It's been smooth for the developers. It's because, and I don't know of any neighborhood who wouldn't welcome a fabulous project in their backyard. The problem is removing all those oversights. In our neighborhood, we were platted in the late 1800s. So we have narrower streets, we have infrastructure issues, and putting more density in that particular area would be very cumbersome and difficult for what we have originally platted there. So,
Last question here, if any of this legislation, Starter Homes Act in particular, but any of this legislation required low starter homes that were actually starter homes, homes affordable for first-time buyers, maybe tiers, maybe something along those lines, would you be more amenable?
absolutely, yes, but none of the bills are, yes, in my God's Backyard has a small provision, but all the other bills don't.
Yeah.
So it doesn't preclude anyone, investors, from coming in and doing exactly what they did during the pandemic.
Same thing with things like short-term rentals and those kinds of regulations.
Exactly.
You want to see those in place as best as possible.
Well, and there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. I think our legislators have the right intentions, but they're going in the wrong direction. For example, inclusionary zoning, which our state is one of 6 states that prevents inclusionary zoning. And what that means is that if a developer builds, let's say, 100 apartments and could make 10 affordable, we don't allow that in our state. We've created legislation that kneecaps affordability. And that's a simple one that could be reversed through our legislature. In Maricopa County, in Phoenix, for example, in the last 5 years, they built 50,000 new housing units. If 10% of that was for affordable housing, workforce housing, low-income housing, whatever the category is, that would be 5,000 more units that than we have today. So there's simple solutions that would really address affordable housing, but these bills line the pockets of a few at the expense of many.
Mary Crozier, North Central Phoenix Homeowners Association. It's good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.